Chapter 1267. Lin Yuan frowned. That was because he heard the other party mention the king of Chenkang. He must have been a king in the past. He watched as the king of Chenkang's body slowly grew taller, and his breathing was like thunder. He knew that the king of Chenkang was definitely a top existence in the world of the Black Pagoda. Human, you are the one who let me out. Chenkang's large eyes suddenly glanced at Lin Yuan. After he finished speaking, his eyes suddenly burst with a burst of vigor. In that case, this king can make you my follower. What? Lin Yuan suddenly laughed. He hadn't expected the king of Chenkang to be so arrogant. Becoming his follower? What kind of joke was that? Before he could say anything, Little Iron Egg couldn't hold back anymore. The long spear in his hand shook violently. His power erupted instantly, and endless killing intent swept towards the king of Chenkang. At this moment, the so-called Chenkang king furrowed his brows and said, "There's actually a natural Azura." He laughed loudly. He reached out and grabbed Little Iron Egg's long spear. Then, he exerted a little force, and the blood-red long spear in his hand instantly turned into powder. However, as an Azura you are still too weak. My old subordinates are all in your body. Come out. After he finished speaking, he slapped Little Iron Egg's body again. Then, the Chinwu Azuras who had already submitted to him appeared. These fellows weren't controlled by the killing intent like before. They all directly submitted to the demon god. Welcome, my king. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan smiled gently. Little Iron Egg dodged to the side. He knew that he wasn't strong enough to deal with the king of Chenkang in front of him. Therefore he very consciously ran to the side. He knew very well that under such circumstances, only his master would be able to restrain this fellow before him. But before he could make a move, the guy who called himself the king of Chenkang pointed at Lin Yuan fiercely. Submit or die. As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand to grab Lin Yuan. However, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently, and then grabbed the guy's huge arm with his hand. A seven-colored light flashed. He cut off the arm of the Fiend Celestial. The Fiend Celestial clearly did not expect such a scene to happen. He did not even have time to react. It seems like the rainbow divine dragons that entered my body were all you're doing. He looked at Lin Yuan curiously. Immediately, the rainbow-colored divine dragons surged out from his wrist and turned into his flesh and blood. However, this power is real. It seems you do not intend to become this king's servant. Lin Yuan chuckled. I awakened you in order to make you my servant. Now I'm giving you a chance. Submit or die. The god fiend seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. I, the king of Chenkang, am a king. How can I submit to a mortal like you? You can die now. As soon as he finished speaking, he roared. Then, a huge axe appeared in his hand and he slashed at Lin Yuan. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan's expression was slightly smiling. He naturally knew that at this moment, this guy would not rest until he was dead. However, this was not his goal. He wanted this guy to become a necessary condition for everyone here to believe in Little Iron Egg. When he thought of this, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Since you're not willing to submit, I'll beat you until you do. Suddenly, a golden bell fell down from the sky. This was another method of Lin Yuan's. A golden bell was directly attached to the god fiend's body. The so-called king of Chenkang could not escape at all. He could feel that this guy had actually started to gnaw on his golden bell. This guy's big mouth seemed to be able to swallow everything. Seeing such a change, Lin Yuan directly snorted coldly, and he fiercely slammed his palm toward the golden bell. With a loud bang, the so-called king of Chenkang covered his ears at this moment. Even his 7 orifices were bleeding. He screamed and the huge axe appeared in his hand again. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not break the golden bell. Lin Yuan punched again. Although there was no pleasure in punching flesh, the god fiend was trapped in the golden bell like a trapped beast. Seeing that he could not deal with the guy in front of him, the god fiend opened his bloody mouth and spat out all the Azuras that he had swallowed. He wanted to use these Azuras as a sacrifice to break the golden bell. Lin Yuan naturally saw through this guy's method. However, he just smiled faintly. Finally, he slapped the golden bell. All the Azuras had been scattered. Little Iron Egg, who was at the side, felt endless heartache. He knew that if these Azuras were used on him, there would be countless benefits. However, seeing that they had been smashed into pieces, he felt a little heartache. Because his master's decision would not be wrong. Little Iron Egg, there is no need to feel heartache. Since these guys can't submit to you, they will be awakened by the king of Chenkang at any time. Then one day they will become your disaster. What you need to do is to cultivate Azuras that are absolutely loyal to you. However, just as he was speaking, the king of Chenkang had already played with the axe in his golden bell. At this moment, cracks appeared on the golden bell. Although the Azuras were scattered, their power was still added to the king of Chenkang. There were sounds of collision, followed by a clear cracking sound. "Little human, how dare you try to shake the position of a god?" After finishing this sentence, this guy directly chopped at Lin Yuan with his axe with monstrous killing intent. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan did not dodge. Instead, he directly faced the axe head-on, and directly punched the blade of the axe head with a fierce punch. Lin Yuan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. This was because he realized that the power used by this guy who was rushing towards him felt very familiar. It was as if it was a power that came from the origin. His expression changed slightly. At this time, although he had already touched the opponent's attack, it did not mean that the opponent would give up. At this moment, the god fiend roared wildly, and the power on his body increased exponentially. This god fiend was like an endless fighting machine. Chapter 1268. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. Of course, he could see that no matter what trick this guy was playing at this moment, it was actually a silent struggle. At this moment, when Little Iron Egg saw this scene, he was slightly shocked. Because he could feel that at this moment, there seemed to be no power in his master's body. It was as if he was completely isolated from the world at this moment. Moreover, this was a method of isolation that cut off power, which was something that no one had expected. At this moment, the old turtle had already begun to think about his escape route. In his opinion, the demon god in front of him was too terrifying, and he had already heard of the legend of the demon god. Therefore he only wanted to escape. Only in this way could he save his life. But at this moment, Lin Yuan's mouth suddenly emitted a sound that sounded like a large bell. The unintelligible syllables came out of his mouth as if they were chimes. The demon god stood there for a long time without coming back to his senses. He seemed to have lost his mind at this moment, and it seemed that he had no way to resist this power at all. Little Iron Egg's eyes became fervent again. He naturally knew that his master's strength was tyrannical, and it was not something that he could speculate about at all. But seeing the change in the scene, he was also a little curious. He did not know what kind of method this sound used to subdue the demon god so easily. Or rather, it was not accurate to say that the demon god's strength had been reduced, because now the demon god seemed to have been assimilated by this power. He stood there and stared blankly at Lin Yuan in front of him. He did not dare to move at all. The old turtle also seemed to have not reacted at all. He could not even believe what was happening in front of him. What's going on? What kind of power is this? How can it make the demon god submit? Lin Yuan naturally heard the old turtle's words, but he did not care. Instead, he gently waved his hand. It doesn't matter what kind of power this is. You have to see that the demon god is just a defeated opponent in front of me. After saying this, he walked towards the demon god in front of him. The demon god's body began to shrink until it was about the same size as Little Iron Egg. Lin Yuan said faintly, "Is this guy considered to be at the pinnacle of the vast ancient path?" Lin Yuan looked directly at the old turtle next to him. The old turtle clearly didn't react. At this moment, this guy actually questioned him like this. He nodded gently, then shook his head. "Although I don't know who you are, based on the means you have displayed, you should be able to crush the many monster kings in the vast ancient road. But you mustn't underestimate the enemy, because the power of the Church of God here is beyond your imagination. So no matter what kind of thoughts you have, it's best not to put them into action. Because you have to think of this. The only one who can control this demon god is the Church of Gods." Lin Yuan frowned. Of course, he knew that this was the territory of the Church of Gods, but he didn't care. For him, the so-called Church of Gods was just a stone in front of him. As long as he wanted to, he could move this stone away anytime and anywhere. He gently reached out and pointed at the demon god in front of him. "Transform into your figure for me. We'll go straight to where we should go." After saying this, he turned around and left without any hesitation. Since there was no one on the vast ancient road who could compete with this demon god, there was no need to hesitate anymore. Now he would let this demon god return to that small barren city with endless horror. Starting from this small barren city step by step, he would build this place into his own path of retreat, a city that belonged to him. The old turtle, however, turned pale with fright. This was tantamount to a face-to-face confrontation with the god-worship sect. If it really came to this point, the Church of Gods would definitely not let them go so willingly. Instead, they would send their most tyrannical guys to fight against them. Lin Yuan certainly felt the worry of these old turtles at this moment, but he didn't care. Instead of saying that these guys were going to deal with him, it was better to say that he was going to deal with these guys from the Church of Gods. No matter what happened in the end, Lin Yuan could completely decide these things by himself. Although Little Iron Egg didn't know what kind of strength his master had, he could see that the power his master brought at this moment, and the boldness he showed, was not something ordinary people could have. "Master, are we going back now?" Little Iron Egg didn't know what Lin Yuan's next step was, so he was going to ask directly. Lin Yuan nodded. "Of course. If we don't go back now, when will we go back?" Now it could be said that everything was ready. He only knew that with the power of this demon god, he could make the people in this city believe in him again and absorb their incense with such power. He could enjoy their worship. Moreover, he could clearly feel that no matter what he did, these guys would not raise any objections. Lin Yuan's expression was a little subtle, but the old turtle next to him had a strange look on his face. He now had no choice but to follow this crazy guy in front of him. He knew that he couldn't deal with this guy at all with his strength, but what was he going to do now? However, when they returned, they didn't expect that the so-called heroes were still waiting for them at the entrance. Seeing their shadows, the heroes all rushed up. "You actually came out alive. I didn't expect you to have such strength. But why are there such changes in your bodies?" "Changes?" Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He found that the demon god behind him seemed to be emitting a special kind of energy fluctuation, and it spread to the three of them. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect such a thing to happen in front of him. He didn't even know what was going on in front of him. Looking at the changes in front of him, he looked to the side in confusion. Chapter 1269. Little Iron Egg naturally knew nothing about this matter, but the old turtle beside him definitely knew something about it. In fact, although this demon god is terrifying, as long as he sincerely submits and is imprisoned, he will emit a special kind of energy fluctuation. This kind of energy fluctuation is supplied to the vast ancient road. Lin Yuan nodded. He already understood what was going on. It turned out that this demon god's physical strength had always been the fundamental reason why the demon kings in the vast ancient road could improve their realms. As for the desert wolf demon king from before, it was simply unable to withstand the pressure inside, which was why it was pushed out. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. He looked at the brave warriors in front of him and said, "Are you talking about the power given by these demon gods?" Lin Yuan naturally disdained this kind of power because for him, this kind of thing was simply a hair on Jianyo's body, and it had no effect at all. But for others and even ordinary people, it meant something different. This was because the benefits they could obtain were self-evident. This was especially true for the brave ones. They had been stuck at a bottleneck for many years. But at this moment when they showed it, when they wanted to have some interaction with Lin Yuan and the others, everyone's expression suddenly froze. This was because they felt that the benefits were real and could not be faked. At this moment, their expressions were all filled with joy because they could see that they had gained benefits at this moment. "Who the hell are you? You can actually make this demon god work for you." But after he said this, all the brave warriors understood that this matter was unusual. The fact that the other party could make the demon god submit to him was already a problem. Little Iron Egg took a step forward and said, "As long as you are willing to submit to my master, you can also get this special power. But don't blame me for not reminding you that this power can't be given to you casually. You have to exchange it with absolute loyalty." Lin Yuan didn't say anything. The old turtle beside him directly said, "That's right. Only those who follow Mr. can attain the Tao. He's a rare almighty in this world." At this point he could already be considered to have a clear view of the situation. He could see what was going on with these people in front of him. He also knew that he had obtained tangible benefits, which was why he said those words at this moment. In his opinion, since things had already come to this point, he had no choice but to do so. Lin Yuan didn't say anything, but the brave warriors looked at him completely differently. The expressions of these fellows changed more or less, but they immediately knelt down and kowtowed. "We're willing to submit." In this borderland, in this chaotic world, having more power meant more ability to protect oneself. Lin Yuan, of course, understood their intentions. These guys weren't loyal yet, so at this moment he had made a decision in his heart. How to deal with these so-called brave warriors in front of him. "In that case, from today on you will become a god, a god. Are you willing?" As soon as he finished speaking, these people didn't hesitate at all and directly knelt down. Lin Yuan nodded with satisfaction. He knew that since this matter was considered a success, there was nothing else that could stop this group of people. Sooner or later this city would be under his control. However, he wanted to change his name to Bruiser. No matter what, Bruiser's name was a little vague and he couldn't say it out loud. He couldn't let everyone else kneel down and shout, "Welcome the great god Bruiser," right? That was 2F** King Lo. When he thought of this, he pointed at Bruiser and said, "From today on, you're the first god of this city, the Azura god." After he finished speaking, the group of people walked towards the barren city. The people of the God Worship Society had already sent people to this city. They might not know about what had happened on the vast ancient road, but they had already been informed about what had happened here. Therefore, at this moment, the God Worship religion's minions had already been in this frozen city. When Lin Yuan and his group of people arrived outside the city, they heard the ignorant people inside the city, who were still worshipping the God Worship religion, shouting constantly on the city wall. "How dare you rebel against the will of God? You're courting death. Now that the God Worship religion has sent people over, don't think that you have any chance at this moment." These people were not polite when they spoke. Obviously, they had been successfully brainwashed by the people of the God Worship religion. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. Instead, he let the demon god who had appeared before stand in front of him. At this moment, the demon god system was revealed. At this moment, all the people were shocked. They had never seen such a powerful demon god. In their eyes, this was a real god, who was many times more powerful than the monster kings sent by the God Worship religion. Lin Yuan squinted his eyes and smiled lightly. At this time, Tai Danner also took a step forward. "I am Azura, the new god. Quickly open the city gate and welcome us into the city. Otherwise," when he said this, his body was full of murderous intent. At this moment, the murderous intent was like a substance, completely surrounding him. Seeing this scene, the people in the city no longer dared to say a word. At this time, a group of armored soldiers stood on the city wall. These guys were all from the God Worship Society. At this time, he stood directly on the city wall and said indifferently, "Are you those rebels? It seems that you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Although you found a..." Halfway through his words, this guy didn't dare to continue. This was because he had recognized what was standing behind Lin Yuan and the others. It was a demon god. These guys were all stunned because they didn't expect that a demon god would reveal the truth at this moment. "Isn't this the demon god in the vast ancient road? Why is he here?" The people of the God Worship religion naturally recognized that this was the guy they had trapped in the vast ancient road. Lin Yuan smiled faintly and said, "Since you have recognized me, there's no need to talk nonsense. Open the city gate and surrender. Otherwise, I won't show any mercy." Chapter 1270. These guys were all stunned because they didn't expect that the demon god would reveal the truth at this moment. "Isn't this the demon god from the vast ancient road? Why is he here?" The people of the God Worship sect naturally recognized that this was the guy they had trapped in the vast ancient road. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "Since you've already recognized me, there's no need to talk nonsense. Open the city gate and surrender. Otherwise, I won't show you any mercy." There was no hesitation in his words. At this moment, when he finished speaking, the people around him were all stunned. At this moment, almost everyone looked at the scene in front of them in confusion. These ignorant people didn't know what was going on because they knew what the so-called demon god of the vast ancient road was. When they heard the name, they couldn't help but be slightly shocked. What the hell is going on? Why has the legendary demon god appeared? Is the God Worship sect not the will of heaven? Have we been worshipping the wrong demon god all this time? Are Iron Egg and the others the will of heaven? These doubts had spread throughout the city. At this time, the people of the God Worship sect fiercely slammed the weapons in their hands. "Shut up, all of you. It's just a demon god. Since we can seal him in the vast ancient road, we can naturally release him. You're all shaken just because you see this demon god. Do you still have any respect for the God Worship sect?" These guys had already gone crazy. They directly gave the order. "Kill all the people who have just spread rumors." As soon as this sentence was finished, there was a sudden scream on the city wall. Seeing the blood dripping from the city wall, Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly became angry. He could no longer suppress the bloody aura on his body. At this moment he almost rushed up. Lin Yuan pulled him from behind. "As a god, you should have the identity and attitude of a god." After saying this, he directly pulled the old turtle to the front. "Launch your first attack on these guys from God Worship Society. I don't believe that these guys will be so unscrupulous." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, the old tortoise's expression immediately turned bitter. He didn't want to offend anyone at all. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, he reluctantly took 2 steps forward. However, he had no choice but to bow his head under the eaves. He naturally understood that in this situation he had no chance to resolve the matter in front of him no matter what. Or rather, his strength wasn't enough to resolve the matter in front of him at all. However, at this time he was pushed to the cusp of the storm. Now the people in front of him left him with no choice. On one hand, they were people who could subdue even the demon god, and on the other hand they were deeply rooted in God worship. Alright, this old man will take the lead. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed forward. At this moment his weapon, his tortoise shell, suddenly appeared in his hand. At this moment he wanted to defeat the enemy with one strike and gain the upper hand by showing his strength. At least he wanted to make everyone look better. In fact, what he didn't expect was that the moment he swung his weapon, the people of the Church of Gods would unite to resist him. You're just two monster kings. How dare you be so arrogant and wanton? Get out of my sight. As soon as the old tortoise's voice fell, his figure directly retreated. Lin Yuan naturally saw that this guy didn't use his full strength. He also saw that the God Worship Society wanted to use this old tortoise to establish their prestige, but how could he give this guy such a chance? He almost didn't hesitate to let the demon god rush up. At this moment he didn't care about the lives of these guys. He knew that it was better to kill them directly than to let these guys waver. After all, this was the only way to make them obediently surrender. Sometimes ruthless means were more effective than gentle means. It was at this moment that the humans began to attack without knowing what was going on. But how could they compete with the demon god? No matter how strong these humans were, they couldn't compete with this demon god, not even the people of God Worship Society. Back then, in order to seal this demon god, they had spent a lot of effort. At this moment, everyone was already staring at the small piece of land in front of them. The demon god directly opened the city gate with a punch. Lin Yuan swaggered in with Little Bruiser. At this moment, no one dared to stop them, not even the people of God Worship Society. At this moment, they seemed to be the absolute masters of this place. This change at the moment shocked everyone. Many people didn't understand what was going on. But at this moment, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Destroy this city. Anyway, this city will be rebuilt from today onwards. As soon as he finished speaking, the demon god behind him began to destroy the surrounding city walls without hesitation. All the humans had a pained expression on their faces. They felt that they had no hope of living, but they didn't expect that the demon god didn't kill them. Instead, when they came into close contact with the demon god and showed their submission, a special power spread throughout their bodies. This was the power that the demon god gave them, just like a halo. Seeing that everyone had stopped talking, Lin Yuan's movements became more and more natural. He walked directly to the center of the city. In his opinion, building a city wasn't that difficult, but there were still some things that needed to be done. For example, in the current situation, these humans had to receive the corresponding benefits. Furthermore, they had to stabilize their worship of Little Bruiser as a god. Of course, Lin Yuan knew that it was more difficult to govern a city than to build one directly. Therefore, he did not hesitate to start the layout. He wanted to let Little Iron Egg give small favors to the residents of these cities. This way he could accumulate the worship of these humans to the gods. But at this time, the people of the Church of Gods gathered together. Obviously, they didn't expect that Little Bruiser and the others could seize the city so easily at this moment. Lin Yuan could see that these guys wanted to deliver a fatal blow. Chapter 1271. But just as he was thinking about this, Little Iron Egg had already walked out. Little Iron Egg had a good grasp of the situation. He knew that in order to become a god, he had to do some things that a god should do. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was thinking about how to finish this matter. Since these people of the god worship religion refused to give up, then he must teach them a profound lesson. At this moment, Lin Yuan had already walked directly in front of everyone. He didn't make any unnecessary movements. He just quietly watched Little Iron Egg collide with the people of the god worship religion in front of everyone. The strength of the people of the god worship religion wasn't too high, but they had the advantage of numbers and their movements were uniform. Lin Yuan knew that this was a test for Little Iron Egg. If he wanted to become a god that everyone in the city believed in, he had to face such a test alone. When the old turtle saw this scene, he didn't quite believe it. You're not worried about letting him deal with these people of the god worship religion alone? You should know that each of these people is not weak. And now that they have gathered together, it's very likely that they will directly destroy the little god you created. The old turtle's voice wasn't loud, but Lin Yuan's expression suddenly became cold. Just like what you said, I can tell you clearly that at this moment, no one can stop him because he doesn't have as many hidden thoughts as you do. I know you don't want to offend either side, but have you ever thought that since you've joined my camp, you've already drawn a clear line between you and me? Lin Yuan wanted to let the old turtle see the situation clearly. The reason why he spared the old turtle's life was that he knew that this guy was definitely not ordinary, and he was different from ordinary demon kings. That was why he kept this guy by his side all the time. He also understood that Little Iron Egg alone couldn't govern such a city. Little Iron Egg lacked both experience and experience. Although he was relatively strong at this moment, no matter how strong he was, he wouldn't be able to govern this city well without corresponding assistance. Lin Yuan wanted to use this city as an escape route. Therefore he had long had this old turtle in mind. It was even more impossible for him to let this old turtle escape in this situation. The reason why he let him be the first to rush up was for this scene. Seeing the changes at this moment, Lin Yuan smiled lightly. The old turtle knew that he had no way out now. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free from the young man's grasp. It was as if he was trapped in a huge chessboard. No matter how he moved, he was just a chess piece. He looked at the human in front of him. He knew that no matter what, he was no match for this person. Whether it was in terms of strength or intelligence, he had no way of contending against this person. Helplessly, he finally sighed softly. I thought that after living for so many years I should be able to see through the implementation, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't outguess you. You've already thought of everything I've thought in advance. Lin Yuan gently shook his head. If you simply wanted to live a stable life, you wouldn't have chosen to stay in that tower. You have ambition and wisdom, but you blindly do everything to defeat Little Iron Egg. This is your courage. As long as you wholeheartedly assist him, I guarantee that your future achievements will be much greater than you can imagine. After Lin Yuan finished speaking softly, he turned his head to look at the battlefield on the side. Little Iron Egg was now covered in blood. His strength wasn't that tyrannical, but his methods were powerful. No matter how severe his injuries were, the Azura blood would heal him. Moreover, at this moment, no matter who wanted to deal with him, they would become his target. He was like a wild beast on this battlefield. Generally, no matter who dared to touch a hair on his head, he would not hesitate to attack that person. His arms, head, shoulders, knees, almost all of them were his weapons. Every inch of his body seemed to be a weapon. In addition, his whole body was covered in blood mist. At this moment he really looked like a god. He stood in the battlefield like a god of slaughter. Even under the siege of these people from the god-worship religion, he didn't show any signs of weakness. On the contrary, the more he fought, the braver he became. At this moment, the blood mist in his body slowly condensed and began to condense into one Azura shadow after another. Lin Yuan was very satisfied with him. He didn't expect that Little Iron Egg could be broken to this level. It seemed that a natural Azura was really extraordinary. At this moment, all of his strength seemed to have flourished. He even began to use the murderous aura on his body to condense one Azura after another. When they saw this scene, almost everyone stood there in a daze. No one could believe that this stubborn little boy, who kept kneeling on the ground or refused to kneel, would suddenly become a god. They couldn't believe what was happening in front of them. But now, everything was happening in front of them. Little Iron Egg's murderous aura had spread out. Even the people from the god-worship religion didn't dare to act rashly at this moment. The ground was littered with broken limbs of the people from the god-worship religion. At this moment, almost no one could use this special method to awaken every Azura that was originally sleeping in their body. Lin Yuan could see that Little Iron Egg could control his murderous aura to attack someone. At this time, the blood-red spear in his hand began to condense, as if all of his strength had been condensed on the spear at this moment. Wherever the spear went, it was invincible. He really did have the bearing of a deity, but this was far from enough. He had wasted too much time. Lin Yuan finally seemed to be a little impatient. He said to the battlefield, "Little Iron Egg has played enough. Let's get rid of these guys. Don't waste any more time. We have to let the people rebuild the city, and our brave warriors need to be trained at this moment." As soon as he finished speaking, Little Iron Egg nodded. At this moment, all the brave warriors rushed into the battlefield and killed all the people from the god-worship religion. Chapter 1272. The death of the god-worship sect's people stunned everyone. They didn't expect that the god-worship sect, whom they had once regarded as gods, would have no room for resistance at this moment. Not only that, but almost all the warriors rushed forward to kill the god-worship sect's people. Not only did they kill them, but they also cut off their heads. Little Iron Egg even used a long spear to string the heads together. These are the gods you worshipped in the past. Other than exploiting you, they will not give you any benefits. If you don't sacrifice your own fairness, they will punish you. Is this the kind of life you want? Little Iron Egg's words left these people speechless. They could see that at this moment, no matter who it was, the child in front of them was no longer the same as before. He was clearly a killing god. At this moment, his appearance seemed to represent some kind of special signal. He was telling everyone that he was the god here. Everyone must submit to him unconditionally. It was precisely because of this state, coupled with the threat of the demon god behind him, and the more unfathomable existence of Lin Yuan, that everyone could not help but shake their heads gently at this moment. If they wanted to preserve their last bit of stubbornness before, they didn't have the chance to do so now. They were no longer in the same state as before. Now was the time for a change of dynasty. The god-worship sect's people were killed like weeds. Little Iron Egg, you have offended the gods. Do you know what kind of crime it is? An old man next to him said this sentence. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He wanted to see how Little Iron Egg would deal with this matter. Little Iron Egg, on the other hand, turned his head abruptly to look at the old man. This old man was a person of virtue and prestige in this desolate city. In the eyes of others, he was a prophet and the messenger of the god-worship sect. No matter which member of the god-worship sect, when they wanted to convey some kind of wish, they would say it through his mouth. Seeing that his identity was being threatened, he was not prepared to leave any other thoughts at this moment. In other words, he wanted to make a final struggle. At least, he wanted to squeeze the last bit of value out of this boy in front of him and keep his identity. Even if he no longer had any contact with the god-worship sect, he wanted to make this Little Iron Egg in front of him sincerely. He still wanted to live a life where he was second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Little Iron Egg quietly. Little Iron Egg snorted and said, "From now on, I'm telling all of you that my name is not something you can call out. From now on, you have to call me Shura God." As soon as he said that, everyone around him was stunned. No one would have thought that the once stubborn child would actually speak to them in such a tone. At that moment, Little Iron Egg's ferocious appearance was clearly saying, "If you don't agree to my terms, I can kill you right now." The moment he finished his sentence, the deity warden behind him snorted coldly. Then he hammered the ground with his arm. At that moment, the whole city seemed to shake. At that moment, everyone was scared except for the old man. He felt that his face was about to be trampled on. Sinner, sinner. You actually colluded with these demons. Now you're even more rebellious. You want to kill those who have helped you. How can you be a god? You can't be compared to those people of the god-worship sect. As soon as he finished speaking, the people present were a little shaken. In their deep-rooted minds, the god-worship sect was the orthodox god. Therefore, at this moment they were more or less a little strange. At this moment they were shaken. They felt that Little Iron Egg in front of them was simply a heinous villain. However, they were not willing to confront Little Iron Egg directly in front of them. Because they could see that the deity warden wasn't the only one behind Little Iron Egg. There were also those heroes who were on his side. Although they felt that being a deity warden was indeed good, they didn't want to give up their persistence. At that moment, Little Iron Egg snorted coldly. He shook the spear in his hand and directly pierced the old man's throat. "I've just said that I'm the Azura god." When he said those words and his actions, everyone was shocked. No one dared to say a word. At this moment, Lin Yuan nodded with satisfaction. He knew that Little Iron Egg was now qualified to be the Azura god. Or rather, in his opinion, Little Iron Egg was at least qualified right now. He took a step forward. For these people, nothing more than a guarantee of life. No matter which god they worshipped, the final result would be the same. There would be no other accidents. Therefore, at this moment, Lin Yuan had made other preparations. He waved his hand gently and said, "From today onwards, this city will be rebuilt. Every day, everyone can receive several times your usual living remuneration from me. Of course, the premise is that you have to believe in the god in front of you." When he finished speaking, Lin Yuan had already turned around and walked into a house, and Little Iron Egg also quickly followed him. "Master, what should we do next? If that's the case, driving away and killing these people of the Church of Gods will definitely not let it go. They will definitely make other moves." After saying that, the old tortoise opened his mouth. He had been following Little Iron Egg just now. At this moment he was guiding him. It was time for him to perform. At this moment, he sighed softly and said, "Actually, this matter is not too difficult to solve. With our current strength, it's not impossible to deal with the God worship sect. He glanced at Lin Yuan next to him. In fact, both of them were well aware of the situation now. The old turtle had no other way to leave their camp. No matter how much he wanted to return to the God worship sect, it was absolutely impossible. Now Lin Yuan's thoughts had begun to change. He was going to use the old turtle to do something that he might not be able to do. At least, he could use the old turtle's identity, or more accurately, his former identity, to provoke the people of the God worship sect and make them lose their minds. Chapter 1273. Lin Yuan said slowly, "I've already thought about it. The way to deal with the God worship sect is to use you." After saying this, his eyes were already fixed on the old turtle. At this moment, the old turtle felt a chill all over his body involuntarily. He said with an unnatural expression, "What can I do?" On the surface he seemed to be siding with Yi Shiwen's faction, but he was a cunning man. If Yi Shiwen left him to Little Iron Egg, he might cause problems in the future. Therefore Yi Shiwen had to unify his interests. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Naturally, I want you to break through your limits at this stage. Or to be more precise, what you should do now is to use your own means to make the people of the God worship sect angry with us. Let them all rush out. That's the best way." Hearing this, the old turtle's expression changed abruptly. He had vaguely guessed what the man in front of him was going to do, but he was not sure about his conjecture. "You mean you want me to lure all the people of the God worship sect out and then kill them all in one fell swoop?" When he said these words, his expression was tense because he knew that if he were to do this, it would be difficult for him to get a good result. Moreover, it was very likely that he would get himself killed. This was not what he wanted to achieve. As soon as his expression changed, Lin Yuan already knew what he was thinking. At this moment he nodded slightly. "That's exactly what you're saying. I'm going to lure all the people of God worship religion here. I want everyone to see how they're going to be defeated here." Although his words were frivolous, the old turtle did not think that the man in front of him was frivolous because he felt that this man was fully capable of doing such a thing. He also knew clearly what the consequences would be if such a thing really happened. Thinking of this, the old turtle could not help but sigh. "Why do you have to choose me? I'm not special to the people of the God worship sect, and I don't have any special status in the sect." He wanted to retreat a little because if he continued to be entangled in this situation, it would not benefit him at all. But right after he finished speaking, Lin Yuan had already stood up. "Who asked you to be the traitor here? If you weren't a traitor, I wouldn't necessarily need you." His words were not polite at all, and there was even a hint of contempt in them. But that was exactly what he wanted. At this moment he didn't want to hesitate or stay any longer. He only wanted to resolve this matter once and for all, especially under such circumstances. He wanted to attribute all of this to the old tortoise in front of him. Only in this way could his interests be completely aligned with his, or more accurately, with Little Bruiser's interests. At this moment Little Iron Egg turned his eyes to her. "Master, are we really going to do this? If we do that, what will happen to us?" Although he knew that it must have something to do with the Church of God, he wasn't sure why it happened at this time and in this state. Shouldn't they be steadily developing their own forces step by step? In his current state, choosing such a method was not something he could have imagined. Especially Lin Yuan's current behavior, it was obvious that he wanted to fight to the death with the other party. Under such circumstances, a life and death struggle was not a good thing for them. Seeing the change in Little Iron Egg at this moment, Lin Yuan sighed softly. "Little Iron Egg, you have been carrying this banner yourself from the beginning to the end, so I'm helping you get rid of a disaster in this battle. If you really leave this disaster behind, I'm afraid it will be detrimental to your future." When the old turtle heard this, he already sensed something else. He felt that the man in front of him was paving a way for his apprentice, and the reason for this was very likely that this so-called master was going to leave. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to use this method to pave the way for his apprentice. When Little Iron Egg thought of this, he didn't have any other thoughts. However, the old tortoise did have some other thoughts in his mind. He even said these words directly. "It seems that you don't want to be involved in these worldly affairs anymore, sir." He looked at Lin Yuan with a smile. He knew that if Little Iron Egg was the only one left, his status as a doghead strategist would be stable in the future. At that time he would really be second only to one person and above everyone else. At least he would be the local tyrant in this place. Then he would go and eradicate the special Church of God. At that time there would really be no threat to him. When he thought of this, the old tortoise instantly became happy. He even took the initiative to ask about the reason why Little Iron Egg cooperated with him. If that's the case, I have a plan to lure out all the people of the Church of God, or at least all the branches here, so that they have no way out. When he heard this, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could see the old tortoise's intention. However, he wanted to use the old tortoise now, so he said directly, "Tell me your plan. If it's feasible, we'll do as you say." As he finished his sentence, he took out a jade pendant from his bosom. This jade pendant was painted with the pattern of the God worship cult. "This is the jade pendant of the Church of God. As long as I crush this thing, those people of the Church of God will not hesitate to use this method to come here. At that time, no matter what their purpose is, it will be obvious at this moment." After saying this, the old tortoise smiled. He knew that no one could refuse his method, especially now that the man in front of him was ready to deal with the Church of God. Therefore, his method was definitely the safest way. From this moment on, Lin Yuan was sure that the old tortoise would be his first step in dealing with the Church of God. However, he also wanted to cut off the old tortoise's way of retreat. Chapter 1274. At this critical juncture, whether it was the old turtle or Lin Yuan, they had already fallen into the plan to deal with the worship religion. Little Iron Egg, who was on the side, was certainly surprised. Although he was a child, he was not stupid. He also understood the crux of the matter. "Master, are you going to leave me?" After he finished speaking, the room instantly fell silent. Lin Yuan turned his head to look at him, narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. "There is no banquet in the world that does not end, so I will definitely leave you in any case. You don't have to worry about anything because you are now my backup plan." He didn't seem to hesitate when he said this. He directly grabbed the jade pendant from the old turtle's hand and crushed it in an instant. It was at this moment that a ray of light shot up into the sky. It seemed that there was no time for hesitation. At this moment, the moment this light soared into the sky, it already carried a strange energy fluctuation. Lin Yuan naturally knew what this energy fluctuation was. Or rather, he knew that this energy fluctuation was a message to the God worship sect. At this moment, he didn't hesitate at all. Instead, he said to Little Iron Egg, who was next to him, "From now on, I will confer you as the god of this city. As long as you become a god, you will be able to obtain another way to absorb energy." He was talking about the incense that people worshipped. But at this moment, when Lin Yuan said these words, Little Iron Egg shook his head firmly. "Master, I don't want to leave you." There was almost no hesitation in his words. However, Lin Yuan just sighed softly. Although all of his power came from the system, his own intelligence and hard work were also unique conditions blessed by the heavens. Therefore, at this moment, they didn't want to have any other thoughts. However, what he thought at this moment was naturally not something that Little Iron Egg could guess. He didn't want any problems to arise because of this matter. Therefore, when he supported Little Iron Egg and made him a god, he had already begun to think of his own way out. Lin Yuan suddenly stood up. "It seems that the Church of Gods is not slow. Since they are almost here, why don't we get up and face them?" At this moment, the people of the Church of God were already standing outside. At this moment, they were aggressive. They claimed that they were here to eliminate the traitor. However, there were so many of them at this moment. They were here to deal with Lin Yuan. At this moment, without any hesitation, these people walked to the front step by step. They had besieged the entire city. At this moment, they had already made up their minds. No matter what, they had to resolve this matter. This change had already attracted Lin Yuan's attention. He knew that the people hiding outside were not as simple as they seemed. This time, the people from God worship religion were completely different from the last time. He could clearly sense that the God worship cult had turned out in full force at this moment. However, there was still no change in him. At this moment, the demon god was already standing outside. All of his thoughts had become clear at this moment. He wanted to have a final battle with these people of the God worship religion. At least he could get rid of these guys and solve his worries in the future. This was not only for himself but also for Little Iron Egg. It was also to give himself a happy ending. At this moment, the old turtle was already standing directly outside the city. "Is the traitor of God worship religion here?" He was now openly provoking these guys. After this sentence came out, everyone's expression changed sharply. They could all feel that the guy standing in front of them was the one who had betrayed them before. However, they did not expect this guy to stand here with such an imposing manner. Lin Yuan also looked at this scene without saying a word. He could feel that at this moment, whether it was the people of God worship religion or the old turtle, there seemed to be a special connection between them. It was a special kind of energy body that intersected with each other between the two sides. Lin Yuan knew that the old turtle was doing everything possible to cut off contact with these people of God worship religion. However, these people of God worship religion seemed to be unwilling to let go. They directly shouted and then rushed up. Seeing this scene in front of him, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. All warriors, listen to me. These are the guys who have enslaved you for many years. Now they are in front of you. What do you want to do? After he finished speaking, all the warriors raised their heads. They looked at the people of God worship religion in front of them. Kill? 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 Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and rush over. At Lin Yuan's order, the demon god roared and spread his power around to the warriors. At this time the demon god also took a step forward. Seeing such a scene in front of them at this moment, the people of God worship religion knew that this battle was inevitable. At this moment, they could feel that the old turtle was simply using this method to send their people here to die. Seeing this scene unfold, Lin Yuan's expression was slightly stunned. The next moment he directly took a step forward. However, he didn't make a move now. He was trying to stimulate the power of the demon god. In this way, these warriors could become stronger and even become existences that could resist the gods. But what he didn't expect was that at this moment, those people of God worship religion actually cast the inescapable net. The so-called inescapable net was a kind of formation. As soon as this formation appeared, it had already enveloped the world. At this moment, the entire city seemed to have become the center of it. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that the other side would choose to deal with him in such a way. However, such a formation was too small for the demon god. At this moment, the demon god suddenly raised his big axe and began to swing it to the side. His attacks were exceptionally powerful, and they were able to sever all energy systems. At this moment, the inescapable net formation had just been launched, and it could no longer be controlled and collapsed. Finally. At this moment, the old turtle took out another jade plate when these guys had already begun to flee in all directions. After the jade plate appeared, it directly floated in the air, emitting a ray of light that enveloped everyone. Chapter 1275. The old turtle's methods have been fully displayed, and even Lin Yuan did not expect the guy in front of him to be so powerful. He didn't expect the old turtle to have such a trick up his sleeve. The God worship sect members also noticed the abnormality at this moment. They immediately focused their attention on the scene in front of them. The light, or rather, the cage that appeared around them imprisoned them at this moment. At the same time, a special energy fluctuation appeared in the place where their gazes converged. It was as if an energy vortex had opened. In the middle of this vortex there were many pitch-black shadows. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly see the momentum of these guys in front of him the moment they appeared. It must be a backup plan left behind by these God worship sect members. Just as this happened, Lin Yuan suddenly took a step forward. Before he could make a move, Little Iron Egg suddenly stepped forward. Then the long spear in his hand shook. Along with a ferocious call, an endless amount of blood chi instantly appeared. In an instant, Asuras appeared around him one after another. These Asuras seemed to be a special species born between heaven and earth. Lin Yuan could clearly see that these Asuras were condensed by Little Iron Egg with his killing intent. They were different from the previous Asuras. These Asuras were much stronger than the previous ones. Seeing the situation on Little Iron Egg's side, the God worship sect members didn't panic. Instead they howled like wolves. After this howl, their bodies began to undergo huge changes. Lin Yuan was stunned because he found that as these guys' bodies continued to grow, their strength also continued to increase. This is law embodiment of heaven and earth? However, he immediately denied this thought. This was because he could sense that although these fellows were using techniques similar to the celestial laws embodiment technique, there were still some differences between them. To be precise, what they were using was a weakened version of law embodiment of heaven and earth. The people of the Church of God laughed out loud. You fools, you deserve to be controlled. You'll never be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. Under such circumstances, you still dare to challenge us, the Church of God. Today I'll show you what real power is. These people of God worship religion were unscrupulous and even prepared to slaughter the brave warriors. However, they were defeated by this special formation. They were not strong enough. Although they had the power of the devil god, they had no way to resist the means displayed by these guys in front of them. After all, God worship religion was stronger than them. But at this moment, Bruiser waved his hand, and the Asuras behind him charged forward as if they had gone mad. In just a few seconds the two sides converged together. Asuras were fated. They did not fear death or pain. They began to charge and fight. Even if they were heavily injured, they did not stop. However, just as he was about to stop, the bodies of the God worship sect members who had used the weakened version of law embodiment of heaven and earth suddenly swelled again in an instant. It was as if they did not care what the people in front of them did. Their bodies grew faster and faster. At this moment, Lin Yuan understood that these people had used law embodiment of heaven and earth for the second time in order to increase their strength again and achieve a crushing effect. However, this method also consumed a lot of their strength. Moreover, their bodies could not withstand such consumption at all. It would only take a moment for them to be beaten back to their original state. Lin Yuan waved his hand fiercely. At this moment, he directly stomped the ground fiercely, and then a blood-colored force surged out of his body. At this moment, those Azuras seemed to have received assistance and enhancement. Seeing this change, their bodies became more solid. Little Bruiser raised his head abruptly. Almost without hesitation, the blood mist on his body began to increase. Little Bruiser roared and stabbed his spear into the ground. Then, with a loud roar, the ground began to roll up. Then a blood-red mist gathered around. This effect, which was close to doubling their strength, made these Azuras more and more courageous as they fought. They had become the main force of this battle. Little Bruiser looked at his master. He knew that at this moment, if it were not for his master, he would not have been able to resist these guys. At this moment, although he wanted to share his master's burden, at the last moment, he had to rely on his master's strength to fight these people from the God worship sect. Thinking of this, he felt a little discouraged. At this moment, he used this method to prove that he was not so weak. He had accumulated too little strength before, which was why he was stretched thin at this moment. Now, with the boost, he was not afraid of consumption. At this moment, these Azuras and those special guys had collided. After this round of competition, the two sides were now equal. The demon god did not move. Of course, this was Lin Yuan's order. Seeing that these guys were not retreating, Lin Yuan knew that they must have some tricks up their sleeves. They must have some special means that they had not used, or there must be someone supporting them from behind. That was why these guys were so arrogant. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Because at this moment, he had already sensed a powerful demonic chi coming towards him. The God worship sect, the so-called God worship sect, was just indulging some monsters. Then they used these monsters to increase their strength. Now they obviously could not wait any longer. Those guys hiding in the dark finally could not help but make a move. However, the way they attacked was a little unimaginable. This was because it was a huge rock. It was directly displayed in mid-air. At this moment, all of its movements were almost indiscriminate attacks that did not distinguish between friend and foe. One after another, the feathers pierced down like sharp arrows, and they carried a strange energy. To be precise, it was a special flame. Once these flames fell on the ground, it would cause a large area to burn. At this moment, these flames could engulf everything. Lin Yuan naturally saw the other party's intention. At this moment, he finally released the demon god. The demonic god roared and charged out. He could not wait any longer. Chapter 1276. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. He knew that with the demon god's resistance, this matter would not be too difficult. Moreover, he could clearly feel that these guys had already thought of a way to deal with the demon god. They would not engage in close combat with the demon god. They knew the powerful strength of the demon god, so they did not choose to engage in close combat at all. Instead, they started to shoot these feathers from afar. First, it was the golden-winged roc, followed by the Qing Luo bird and the phoenix bathed in fire. At this moment, all of the demon kings that were flying in the air appeared. Seeing this change, a rainbow light flashed in Lin Yuan's hand, and then a chain appeared directly in the demon god's hand. The demon god waved the rainbow chain in his hand and spun it directly towards the big birds in the air. These big birds were instantly entangled by the iron chain and struggled in mid-air for a long time, but could not escape. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He knew that since these people from the God worship sect wanted to fight with him in this last battle, they would not only send out these few demon kings. With the foundation of the God worship sect, they should still have a lot of strength. When Lin Yuan thought of this, he was about to take action, but at this moment he suddenly felt a special force sweeping out. Puffs of smoke began to appear in the field and collided with Little Iron Egg's blood-red fog, giving off a sizzling sound. It was as if the two types of energy could not be perfectly matched at all, and they were two types of forces that interacted with each other. Seeing this scene, the means that the old turtle had used previously had already been broken. Under the attack of these demon kings such as the golden-winged roc, His cage-like energy had begun to break rapidly. But the old turtle did not want to stop here. At this moment, a wisp of anger had been aroused in his heart. At this moment he did not want any other accidents to happen. He just wanted to show all his strength. Since there was no way to return to the god-worship sect, he already had some clear ideas in his heart. What he needed to do was to get his position right and stand in the most accurate team. At this moment he didn't want any unnecessary changes to occur. At the next moment he unleashed all of his power, and the tortoise shell in his hand flew into the air. And at that moment, a knife was hidden in the turtle's shell. Once it flew out, it was like a machine that harvested lives. Most of the people from the Church of Gods had fallen, but more and more monster kings appeared in the field. At this time, the bird-type monster kings were struggling in mid-air. At the same time, a few other monster kings who looked strong and muscular had appeared. They were all distracting the demon god. Seeing this scene, the demon god began to shake the iron chain in his hand. Although he couldn't contend against the combined forces of all the monster kings, he still managed to stimulate a trace of madness. His body involuntarily emitted some special energy. All of this energy was absorbed by the brave ones. At the same time, the brave ones seemed to have become believers of the demon god. Their powers complemented each other and helped each other. Well, when seeing this scene, Lin Yuan did not have the slightest intention to stop it. He even indulged it a little. It was as if he didn't want to stop it after seeing all this with his own eyes. He even wanted more people to absorb the power of the demon god and form a bond with him. Only in this way could the people present begin to become more tyrannical. It was also at this moment that Lin Yuan's expression began to change. He was ready to take action. He knew that if he persisted in this situation, he was afraid that it would not do him any good. But just as he was thinking about this matter, a light suddenly fell from the sky. It was a pure gold carriage. As soon as the carriage appeared, golden bricks began to appear one after another. Then they slowly floated in the air. However, these weren't real gold bricks. Instead, they were pieces of energy gathered together. Following closely behind was a group of warriors in golden armor. They were charging straight towards them. The mortals in the city were scared silly. They had never seen such a magnificent scene before. At this moment, all their thoughts were thrown to the back of their minds. They only knew how insignificant they were compared to these people. Previously they had looked down on Little Iron Egg. But at this moment they had long turned their contempt into worship. It was pure worship for killing. Or rather worship for power. Just as Lin Yuan was about to take action, Little Iron Egg once again erupted with an unimaginable power. This guy shouted, "Endless slaughter." Then, an extremely majestic power surged in front of him and behind him. The murderous aura around him seemed to have condensed into a sea of blood. Waves of valiant power impacted the entire scene at this moment. Furthermore, what no one had expected was that the moment this power rushed out, it had already begun to sweep across the entire area. Everyone seemed to be unable to control themselves when they came into contact with this sea of blood. The people on their side became extraordinarily powerful after being strengthened by this sea of blood. As for the people on the other side, when they came into contact with this sea of blood, they only felt the endless power of killing. This series of changes caught the people of the Church of Gods unprepared. The gradually increasing number of monster kings also saw this scene. They were about to rush over, but Lin Yuan directly made his move at this moment. His body stepped in the air and his body rose from the ground. Then, step by step, he seemed to be stepping on the backs of these monster kings. Waves of ferocious power emanated from his body. Or more accurately, it was a special aura that emanated from him. It was an aura that looked down on the world and made everyone in the world bow their heads. Whether it was mortals or monster kings. Almost none of them could raise their heads. They bowed their heads countless times. The moment they stubbornly tried to raise their heads, they involuntarily lowered their heads again. "You want to go against me? Let's see if you have the qualifications." After saying this, Lin Yuan's figure was already above the crowd. He directly rushed toward the golden carriage. He knew that with his subordinates, even the demon gods, could not resist the guy in the golden carriage. So he decided to take action himself. Chapter 1277. Lin Yuan had just made a move, or rather he hadn't made a move at all. His aura alone was enough to make everyone unable to raise their heads. Seeing this, Little Bruiser, the demon god, the warriors, and Azuras all felt as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They raised their heads and roared together. Their voices shook the wilderness. However, the sect of gods had been famous for a long time. How could they let them go so easily? Or rather, how could these guys let them do whatever they wanted? Just as Lin Yuan rose into the air, a strong aura suddenly descended. It was a guy flapping his wings in the air. This guy with flapping wings was one of the 4 great guardian warriors of the sect of gods. The moment this guy appeared, Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He found that this guy's strength was too strong. Even if all the people below joined forces, they would still be no match for this guy. At this moment, the moment this guy appeared, all the monster kings of the sect of gods as well as the crowd, involuntarily knelt down. My lord. The moment he said that, it was clear who he was. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. You are the master of these minions. As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, the guy's wings vibrated. Then a thunderbolt shot out from his wings. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan did not even dodge, but the people next to him were shocked, because everyone could feel that this guy had just flapped his wings, and it had already brought about the momentum of a thunderbolt. If they were to really let this fellow attack them, no one would feel good. Lin Yuan didn't move. He just stood there and watched the scene in front of him. This kind of test is meaningless to me. After saying this, he waved his hand and the thunderbolt disappeared. Sparks seemed to have appeared in the eyes of the two of them. No one said anything. No one dared to take a second look because everyone could clearly see the scene that had appeared in front of them. This was not a battle they could participate in at all. Or rather, there was no room for them to participate in this battle. This was not a battle at their level at all. The two of them could easily kill everyone present. Therefore, whether it was the people of the sect of gods or Taidan era, they all retreated at this moment. They knew that at this moment they couldn't participate in such a battle at all. They could only watch from afar. Finally, the guy flapping his wings sneered. I am the Lord of Hell of the sect of gods. Now that you have slaughtered my disciples and followers, it's time to settle the score with them. After saying this, he slowly landed on the ground. Lin Yuan smacked his lips. If they didn't provoke me, why would I kill them? Moreover, since you are the Lord of Hell of the sect of gods, why didn't you show up at the beginning? Why did you only show up after these guys died? In my opinion, you just want to use these guys as scapegoats. As soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, the Lord of Hell sneered. We are all people with such cultivation, so there's no need to waste any more time. Do you think it's possible to provoke me with such nonsense? The Lord of Hell seemed to have seen through Lin Yuan. After saying this, Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed. He directly took a step forward. I didn't want to waste time with you, but seeing you standing here and chattering, I have to give you a chance. Otherwise, you won't even have a ceremony to show up. Wouldn't that be even more embarrassing? This was obviously a provocation to the so-called Lord of Hell. The people under the Lord of Hell began to curse loudly. They were all the trusted followers of the Lord of Hell. At this moment, they were also unceremoniously waving flags for their boss. However, Lin Yuan's cold eyes made all these people shut up. At that moment, he poured all of his energy and thoughts into it. He was using this moment to tell everyone that he was the king's Tao. He was the master of this world. The next moment, the Lord of Hell suddenly flashed and directly stepped in front of Lin Yuan. Just like that, the two of them collided with each other, using their own aura to suppress each other. This feeling was as if two people were purely fighting with each other. However, the way they fought with each other was too dangerous. Almost in an instant, all the aura between heaven and earth began to become chaotic. It was as if no one could withstand this blow. At this moment, not only did Lin Yuan not take a step back, but he also suppressed his opponent step by step. Finally, this guy, the Lord of Hell, couldn't hold on any longer. He couldn't help but flap his wings and retreat. Don't waste time doing things. Let's fight to the death. Lin Yuan, right? Today, I'll let you know how powerful the Lord of Hell is. As soon as he finished speaking, he launched his attack without any hesitation. It was also at this moment that Lin Yuan also launched an attack. However, this time, his body was entangled with a 7-colored light, while his opponent's body was covered with a golden light. Lord of Hell, Heavenly River. With one move, the golden carriages and golden soldiers in the sky all rushed down at this moment. They were like a special kind of attack that directly swept towards this side. As soon as this attack was launched, Lin Yuan already stopped talking. This was because he had already realized that this kind of attack and method of attack was not completely directed towards him. On the contrary, it was directed towards the people behind him. This guy didn't intend to fight him head-on from the beginning. Instead, he wanted to use this opportunity to attack the people behind him. As long as he killed all the people behind him and left Lin Yuan alone, he would naturally win. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan suddenly snorted coldly. Then, a bloody mist spread out from his body and directly connected to Little Iron Egg's body. At this moment, Little Iron Egg couldn't control himself at all. He suddenly laughed wildly, and then a thick bloody mist spread out from his body. The spreading blood mist shrouded everything in its vicinity. After doing all this, Lin Yuan didn't explain anything. He just wanted to use this opportunity to let Little Iron Egg experience this level of attack. This action was undoubtedly a provocation to the Lord of Hell. As one of the 4 great guardian warriors of the God worship sect, how can I tolerate your provocation? You actually let your subordinates resist my method. You're courting death. Chapter 1278. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. I don't think this is a provocation. At this moment he had already turned around and Little Iron Egg had already charged into the air. As he moved, the blood-red mist in the sky started to condense. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. He was just using this method to tell the so-called Nether King standing in front of him. All of his power wasn't something the Nether King could pry into. His little disciple could make the Nether King wish he was dead. Of course, Little Iron Egg hadn't reached that stage yet. He was just resisting the Nether King's methods. However, he could feel that his master seemed to have used a method to enlighten him. His strength had become extraordinarily strong, and he could even feel the rising power filling his body. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. Instead he looked to the side. Since you want to attack my people, it would be rude if I didn't return the favor. After saying this, he stomped his feet. As soon as this method was displayed, the demon god behind Lin Yuan had already pounded his chest and kept roaring. From today onwards, I'll show you what the strongest damage is. After Lin Yuan said this, Little Iron Egg landed on the demon god's head. In just an instant their auras seemed to overlap. This kind of overlap wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. A ferocious aura engulfed the entire place. At this moment Lin Yuan actually took a step back. Seeing this, the Nether King didn't understand what was going on. He was even a little puzzled. Did he see wrongly? What? Are you scared now? You actually want to retreat? Are you trying to avoid a fight? Lin Yuan just smiled and shook his head. Finally he pointed behind him. With your level you're not my opponent. Look behind you. That's your opponent. You're worthy of being my opponent. He was referring to Little Iron Egg who was riding on the demon god. Previously, he had used his own methods to forcibly raise Little Iron Egg's strength. Now, the demon god was showing its usefulness. The demon god could stabilize Little Iron Egg's strength. Furthermore, it allowed him to stabilize his current cultivation base. That was the most important thing. The current little bruiser was completely different from before. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression began to change. He realized that Little Iron Egg's body wasn't just burning with blood mist. His entire body was burning with a ball of fire. That was because his blood had started to boil because of the nourishment. At this moment, Lin Yuan's behavior began to change significantly. At this moment Little Iron Egg was like a burning fireball. His eyes had turned dark red, and his entire body was covered in blood-red flames. The next moment, he charged straight at the Nether King. He no longer had any scruples. His entire body was covered with killing intent. It was as if everything about him had changed at this moment. At this moment, Lin Yuan's mind began to change slowly. He knew that Little Iron Egg's strength was getting stronger and stronger. He was prepared to ascend to godhood on the spot. Although he had always told Little Iron Egg that he could ascend to godhood, he hadn't done anything. Now he didn't want to delay or hesitate. He wanted to let the person in front of him know that they were facing a true god. When Lin Yuan thought of this, he did not hesitate and directly took out the map in his hand. Then a ray of light shot out from the map. Lin Yuan gently pointed his finger at Little Iron Egg. From today onwards I confer you the title of Azura God. You will be in charge of protecting this pure land. As soon as he finished speaking, thunder rumbled in the sky. This was heavenly thunder. It was completely different from other types of thunder. At this moment Little Iron Egg's battle intent became even stronger. The Nether King beside him snorted coldly. So what? You want to use these tricks to deceive me? Do you think I will fall for your tricks? Nether King, heavens explode. The golden energy bricks in the sky began to become restless. These fellows were like raindrops that swept towards the ground. However, their final target was Little Bruiser. This was the Nether King's strongest move. Originally, Lin Yuan should have been the one to bear this move. However, it had already landed on Little Iron Egg. However, Little Iron Egg didn't seem to be afraid. He even roared madly, causing the thunder in the sky to fall on his body. Break from me. With a loud roar, the spear in his hand surged out and shattered the sky. Little Iron Egg stood upright in the sky like a real god. He looked down at the people on the ground as if they were ants. The blood-red flames started to converge into his body. The thunder wrapped around his spear. The spear didn't just shatter the golden energy bricks. It also seemed to make the sky tremble. Suddenly, a special power circulated around Lin Yuan's body. Without the slightest hesitation, he instantly cut off the connection. This was the connection between him and Little Iron Egg. However, this connection required Little Iron Egg to give him power in return. However, he didn't need this little bit of power right now. On the contrary, everything he did seemed to be telling everyone that Little Iron Egg was the god of this place. He was sacred and unchangeable. Lin Yuan had already used this method. At this moment, he didn't hesitate to cut off the connection between him and Little Iron Egg. After that, all the power returned to Little Iron Egg. This fellow's aura had indeed increased explosively once again. Little Iron Egg struck out with his spear again. However, it was completely different from the previous time. At this moment, all of its power was concentrated on the spear, and its target was the Nether King. This move was wrapped in an incomparable power as it charged towards the Nether King in front of him. Chapter 1279. No one believed that Little Iron Egg had such strength. Of course, Lin Yuan was an exception. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that the so-called 4 guardian deities of the god worship sect would be so weak in front of him. Because of this change, hope was ignited in the eyes of the heroes. Even the old turtle's expression began to change obviously at this moment. There was a smile on his face. At this moment he felt that everything was worth it. Or rather, he felt that everything here had stabilized for him. As long as Little Iron Egg could kill the Nether King of the 4 great guardian warriors, then everything would be easily solved later. Not only that, but when they really intimidated the people of the god worship sect, they would be able to achieve hegemony. At least with this direction as a start, they could clearly see the hope of the future. Not everyone could have this kind of luck. Little Iron Egg directly became a god and fought Pluto, one of the 4 guardian deities. However, Pluto smiled at this moment. He looked at the scene in front of him and said indifferently, "Do you really think this kind of attack can defeat me?" When he spoke, there was a hint of arrogance in his voice. Little Iron Egg was slightly stunned by this kind of momentum. However, he immediately discovered the other party's hidden technique. In an instant, the Underworld King's body disintegrated into a golden liquid. At this moment, the light from his body began to flow to the side involuntarily and then condensed back into his appearance. When this happened, Lin Yuan, who was standing at the side, didn't seem surprised at all. He seemed to have foreseen this situation. He glanced at Little Iron Egg next to him and said, "This is not enough for you to kill him. If you really want to achieve hegemony and kill him directly, I have a better way to teach you." After saying this, Lin Yuan walked out slowly. At this moment, his every move seemed to be filled with a threatening aura. When the Nether King saw this scene, he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Although he could rely on the ability to decompose his body into golden liquid to avoid fatal injuries, he didn't know why, but when he saw the man in front of him, he felt an indescribable fear. He could only use this method to avoid it. However, his speed was not as fast as Lin Yuan's. Lin Yuan was like a demon from hell. In just a flash, he was already in front of him. Then he stretched out his hand. His finger gently slid across the Nether King's body. A ferocious power bloomed from his finger like a flower. At this time, Lin Yuan turned his head to look at Little Iron Egg. "Did you see that? You have to use this kind of power to attack his body, only then can you kill him in one blow." He was using the Nether King as a punching bag. His goal was to let Little Iron Egg practice. At this moment, Little Iron Egg licked his lips and attacked with his spear again. He had already sensed his master's intention, which was to use his existing power to seal the energy in this fellow's body. Only then would they have a chance to break through the enemy's defenses. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's expression froze slightly. This was because Little Iron Egg seemed to have given up all his defenses. He knew that he could remind him at this moment, but he did not do so. This was because a battle was to let his opponent feel his own inadequacy. Little Iron Egg tried again and again but failed again and again. The Nether King was like a ravine in front of him. He could not get over it at all. Although he could injure the Nether King, he would use his liquefied body to dodge every time. At this moment, this change in scene made everyone feel that Little Iron Egg had no hope. At this moment, Little Bruiser seemed to have fallen into a frenzy. He continued to launch attacks with his spear, causing the ground to crack. However, he still could not kill the Nether King. "Madman, you madman, stop. If this continues, you will die before me." The Nether King finally spoke. He was now afraid of Little Iron Egg's crazy attacks. However, Little Iron Egg did not retreat at all. Instead, his attack speed became faster and faster. "I won't die. I am the Azura god," Little Iron Egg said as he laughed wildly. His crazy words did not surprise anyone. Everyone could see that Little Iron Egg was like a madman at this moment. He kept stabbing his spear into the Nether King's body. However, the Nether King still did not want to give up hope. He looked at Little Iron Egg and said, "I won't stop you if you want to become a divine monarch. However, you must be my enemy." Little Iron Egg did not hold back. "I will only be qualified to become a true Azura god if I kill you, a god in the eyes of others. However, I can also sense that your body's recovery speed is getting slower and slower. You must have consumed a lot of energy." Lin Yuan nodded slightly when he heard this. He knew that Little Iron Egg had understood this after attacking the Nether King repeatedly. Little Iron Egg stabbed his spear into the Nether King's body once again. At this moment, the high and mighty Nether King did not turn into a liquid state. He had consumed a lot of energy. Holding the spear in his hand, the Nether King looked at Little Iron Egg in disbelief and said, "Why do you have to be so crazy? What supported you to become like this?" Lin Yuan shook his head. He could see that the Nether King was reluctant to leave this world. However, what could he do? At this moment, everything seemed to have lost its meaning. Little Iron Egg had finally killed the Nether King and successfully absorbed his power to become the Azura god. He stood on the Nether King's body and looked in the direction of the people from the god worship sect. "Submit or die. Choose for yourselves." His long spear shook, almost without the slightest hesitation. Seeing that Little Iron Egg had completely grown up and was even faintly exuding the aura of a superior, Lin Yuan smiled with relief. Then he sighed. Since things had come to this point, it was time for him to leave. Finally, in the face of Little Iron Egg's powerful strength and naked threat, all the people from the god worship sect chose to submit. Not only them but the entire god worship sect had been utterly defeated. When the Nether King's body dissipated, everyone knew that the Nether King was actually the legendary hierarch of the god worship sect. He had created his external incarnations and turned them into the 4 great guardian deities. In fact, each of the 4 great guardian deities was only one of his doppelgangers. However, only the Nether King was his real body. Now that the Nether King had been killed, the god worship sect naturally fell into a situation where there was no leader. Lin Yuan stretched out his hand and asked Little Iron Egg to come to his side. "Now that you have become a god, everything can be completely returned to the beginning." Little Iron Egg was stunned. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly raised his head with tears in his eyes. "Master, you are leaving." Although his tone was calm, everyone could see that he was reluctant to part. Lin Yuan nodded gently. "Someone once promised me a big dream. In the dream, almost all the demons in the 9 heavens and 10 lands were under my control. However, the only thing I could not control was myself. Someone promised me a dream, so I could only return the favor and observe the path of freedom." After saying this, he was ready to leave. However, the moment he was about to leave, the sky suddenly changed color. Bolts of lightning swept down. The lightning was as fierce as raindrops. It fell on Lin Yuan like crazy. Everyone saw this scene. Little Iron Egg directly knelt on the ground. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan only smiled faintly. For him, all of this was a thing of the past. He didn't need anyone to witness it. He only needed to experience it himself. Finally, Lin Yuan felt as if he had been pulled out of this world and out of this space. Another version of himself stood in front of him. "This is the ending you want, right? Assist a god and conquer a world. You can even create a god with your own hands." The other version of himself looked at him and then spoke. Hearing this, Lin Yuan shook his head slightly. "The world I want is pieced together by the 3,000 great Taos. Everyone can enter the Tao." After he said this, the other version of himself suddenly grabbed his neck. "What? You can enjoy all of this, but I have to be imprisoned here. I gave you everything you wanted and I even gave you the system. Everything you have is given to you by me. What right do you have to say that you want to give up at this critical moment?" Lin Yuan was silent for a moment. He looked at the other version of himself in front of him and finally said slowly, "You can only give me everything I want because I asked you to give it to me. Otherwise you wouldn't even have this chance." Lin Yuan did not say anything else. From how he saw it, everything had been for naught. Moreover, all of his faith and hope had been destroyed. He no longer needed that so-called empty success to prove himself. What he needed was a peaceful inner world that he could create by himself. Perhaps this world was not perfect, but to him, it was enough that he had some new insights. Lin Yuan lightly smiled. From today onwards, everything has come to an end. I don't need to explain myself to anyone, not even you. The other Lin Yuan roared. What? I refuse to accept this. No one could refuse to accept this, not even the other version of himself. A trace of a smile appeared on Lin Yuan's face. At that moment, it was as if he had been raised to a higher level. In the next moment, a serious look appeared on his face as he looked at the other version of himself and said calmly, "From now onwards, you can also leave." As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if his words were the law. The entire space suddenly began to collapse. In the next second, Lin Yuan suddenly woke up with a start. Cold. The bone-piercing cold seemed to have penetrated deep into his bones, causing Lin Yuan to shiver. Looking around, he found that he was lying on a beach. His body was wet and he could vaguely feel the dampness and coldness. Looking into the distance, he could see the distant skyscrapers reflecting the rays of the sun. "I'm back?" Lin Yuan was somewhat dumbfounded. Once again, he lowered his head to look at the clothes he was wearing. Wasn't this the set of clothes that he had worn when he had jumped into the sea to commit suicide? In other words, he did not die? Instead, he was washed to the beach by the waves? Everything that had happened in his mind earlier was just a dream? Lin Yuan was somewhat in disbelief. Looking around, Lin Yuan suddenly saw a team of rescue personnel in the distance rushing toward him. They seemed to have discovered the abnormal situation here. Was everything just a dream after all? Lin Yuan felt his weak and powerless body. It was completely different from the him in the dream who could move mountains and seas with a raise of his hand. Forget it. Since the heavens did not let me die and even let me have a dream, then I'll just treat it as a dream. Even if there is no system, so what if there is no sky martial world? Since I, Lin Yuan, have returned, I will not continue to be a coward. Understanding this, Lin Yuan staggered to his feet. Finally, with the help of the rescue team, he walked toward the beach. However, at this time, Lin Yuan's body suddenly trembled. Ding! The end of the book. Regarding the ending of this book, there are many developments. Everything can be attributed to Lin Yuan's dream, or it can be attributed to him having returned after becoming a god in another world. As for what will happen after he returns, it will be up to you. This is an open ending, an ending that is filled with imagination. Lin Yuan's story is still continuing, and our footsteps are also constantly moving forward. Thank you readers for your continuous support. Thank you everyone. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.